Well, welcome to another Dr. Russ Airgun adventure. And this is part 2 of the Daisy Museum, which we went to way down in the southwest corner of Arkansas, in a place called Rogers, Arkansas. And also right there is the home of Walmart. Very interesting town altogether. Before a few of you say, well, I don't do well in museums, this is about a museum and I don't need to go there, let me tell you, you just might. Because if you have a true passion for air guns, you might want to know the answer to some of these things. What Daisy products ended up on the moon and are still there now? And were taken there by, of course, the astronauts. There's 3 of them. Who made 50 million air guns by 1960? That's 60 years ago. You know, I have this deal breaker list of 72 items. And if you're buying a new gun, you might want to have some of those highlighted and say, I'm not going to buy another gun unless it has these features. So here's a feature. What air gun, way back when, had a sundial on the stock? One air gun had a sundial on the stock. What air gun company also made powder guns with octagon barrels, 22 caliber? And even made a 50 caliber. You know, I own a Zeus 72 and a pile driver 50, but my goodness, a 50 caliber firearm was made by Daisy. So there's a lot to learn in this museum that you might not know. And we still got Joe Murphin as our guide. Joe, I remember one of the most famous Daisy stories was made into a movie about Don't Shoot Your Eye Out. Tell us something about this.
Well, Gene Shepard was known as the Hoosier humorist. He was a very funny writer of short stories. He had a radio show. He would tell some marvelous, funny stories. And a group of his stories were put together in an anthology called In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. And those series of short stories became the basis for the scenes in the movie A Christmas Story. So Gene Shepard comes to Rogers, Arkansas in 1982, a year before the famous Christmas Story movie comes out the next year. And he says, I need 6 Red Ryder guns like I had as a kid. And the movie is set post-World War II, so it would have been possible that he had a Red Ryder BB gun. But he said he had a Red Ryder BB gun with a compass and something that tells time, a sundial in stock. And the Red Ryder never had that. That was in a gun called the Buck Jones, which was a pump gun. So Daisy began to argue with him that the Red Ryder never had that, it can't be in your movie that way, and Gene Shepard was kind of immobile on that issue and said, no, that's the way it's going to be in my movie. And so in 83 and 84, Daisy made the Red Ryder with a compass and sundial.
Joe, we all know what a compass is. A lot of people haven't seen the sundial, but I see a sundial carved in the stock, and I see a hole there. So there was something stuck there that would tell the kid, it's time, maybe I better get home like Mom told me to be.
I think you could imagine that you could actually make that work, but it did come with, well, the first ones didn't, but later on they came with a little black stick called the gnomon, G-N-O-E-M-E-N, gnomon. And the gnomon was a stick that went into the hole, and then if you held the gun just right, you could get the stick to cast the shadow and tell you what time it was.
Yeah, no, we don't have to go home now.
I think you have to at least be a scout, if not an Eagle Scout, to know how to work a gnomon and a sundial.
I see a lot of different things come onto the stocks here. Every now and then I'll sell a gun. I've got about 75 air guns, right? 77 right now, and I'll say, would you like it signed or not? And in every case, they want me to take a Sharpie marker and sign it, and So those are worth thousands of dollars.
The ones you've signed are. This is just the old Buzz Barton. He was a movie star. He was a young man who could ride a horse and shoot a 6-gun, and that's part of the story of how Red Ryder came to be, because Daisy was naming their guns after real people who were movie stars, and they were putting their name on the product, and they decided it might be better to have a fictitious character after which they named the gun.
And this is how we get the name Springer.
That's a Springer, all right, isn't it? Yeah. You've seen the inside of many an air gun, but a lot of people haven't, and that's why we chose to put that in the case.
Now this lever action up here looks like a forerunner to one of your very famous lever action target guns, competitive guns.
It does look like a 99 or a 49. It's certainly a wide-bodied gun. That was one of several post-war or during war, pre-war guns that Daisy made, kind of a military-looking model.
Paula, come to this side and just look at how thick that stock is. When Joe said it's a wider gun, you understand what he was talking about. It looks like it was made out of maybe a 2x4, 2x6.
It's very thick, and so is the forend, and the forend runs virtually the length of the gun. So it's a 1,000-shot gun, holds a lot of BBs.
Wow. Wow. And this looks like a collection of the Red Ryders over the years.
Well, that was a good lead-in to Red Ryder, because these wider guns really couldn't compete. The Model 95, well, in the competitive scale they could, because they were heavy and well balanced. But on a retail scale to consumers, the lighter gun, the thinner gun like the Red Ryder prevailed on the retail counter. So that's part of the reason for the Red Ryder's success. The other reason is, like we talked about, it's multi-generational.
Yes.
I had been out to Pagosa Springs, Colorado, to what used to be there was the Fred Harmon Museum of Western Art. And Fred was an amazing Western artist. We do have one of his original oil paintings here on the wall, the large oil that's framed there. But Fred also drew comic strips. And that's what he became famous for, was the Red Ryder comic strip. And I'd been out to his studio, and his son had showed me a gun up on the wall in his studio. And he said, "You should take a picture of that. That's the first Red Ryder ever made." And I thought, well, it is early Red Ryder. It's got a copper band on the forearm and on the muzzle, and there's several things about it. But we had a first model Red Ryder. This is a first model Red Ryder, 1940, 1941, 42. And so I didn't really know how you could prove that, but I certainly didn't question. Fast forward about 10 years, Fred's son passes away. His wife wants to kind of clean out the studio and close down the museum. And all this starts happening really fast. And the gentleman I met in Pagosa Springs said, "You need that gun in your Daisy Museum." I said, "Well, it's the first model Red Ryder. We've got one." He said, "Let me take pictures of the other side." And that's when he sent me this photo that shows the limited edition certified one only, signed by Cass Huff and Robert O. Wesley. And you might be able to tell that to protect that, Fred Harmon covered it with Scotch tape in 1940. Probably not a good move, but who knew, what Scotch tape would do to a gun since 1940. He also took a nail and scratched on the other side APR 240, meaning that he received the gun April 2nd, 1940. So we believe that to be a very early gift of a prototypical Red Ryder that even predates the first model. And that's the gun off of which we made the tribute gun.
And is it displayed here?
This is the original gun right here, okay. And then the tribute guns are the ones that are for sale.
But I mean, that gun right there, is that anywhere here in the museum?
Yes, that gun hanging up there,
yeah,
is right here.
Oh, it is there. Okay.
This is it, and you can see the Scotch tape, and you can read the limited edition certified one only, Cass Huff, Robert O. Wesley, and
okay.
that hung in Fred's studio. But for some reason, if you see the photo up here, he'd chosen to turn it the other way. Well, you couldn't see what made the gun so special. All you could see is it was an old Red Ryder.
And there's some more guns. That one up there in the top left, now that's a thick gun, and it's a lever action, and it's a target gun.
This is Daisy's tribute to shooting education. As early as 1948, in the Detroit public schools, Daisy was teaching people how to shoot. I think we may have some older black and white photos up there or something like that. But they pretty soon realized that shooting education is fun, but just like every sport, in football you want to go to the Super Bowl. Well, where do you go with BB gun shooting? So they created a Daisy National BB Gun Championship match in 1966. Started inviting the best teams that had won a state match from all over the country, and they still do that today.
And today, as many as 1 million young kids get trained on a Daisy.
Well, true.
A year.
Yes. You'll have at a national match like this, and this is the best of the best. So you'll have 60-some teams of 7 kids on a team, plus their coaches and their families, and they all converge here for the national match. And you look at the opening ceremonies, this photograph here, and you say, there's 2,000 people. That's a lot of people. But think about this being the tip of the iceberg. These are the kids who won a state match. How many other kids went through the program and then decided they'd rather play soccer? How many other kids went through the program, did get on a team and competed locally, and didn't make it to state?
I remember.
And so this is the group that represents the million.
I remember reading something about the top, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 or 7 per state then moved up.
Yes, it has to be. You have to win a sanctioned match, which means it's an NRA governed match by the NRA rules, and has taught the Daisy 10-lesson safety curriculum. And you compete in that state match. If you come in first, second, or third, you can come to the national match. So it's a qualifying match. You have to have won at state to come to the nationals. This was a group that I had the pleasure of finding. This was the group that won the match in 1966, and here they are 50 years later in 2015. We reunited them in Rogers, Arkansas.
Wow. Well, that is something.
And this young man here is not a young man anymore. Second from the left, he walks into this museum and he brings this gun, and this is the gun he won the match with in 1966, and he brought it and donated it to the museum. We made a special version of that .499, which we had gold-coated walnut stock, medallion inset, and we gave this to every coach that brought a team to the match in 2015. And to me, how important is it? This is what we're doing today, and this was the first gun to win the first match in 1966.
And that forward hand stock is carved just a little differently.
It is. It gives you a good grip. It sets in your palm well, and the gun is very well balanced. And it's tremendously accurate at 5 meters.
Yeah. Really something. Joe, staying with this war story, tell us just a little bit about this machine gun.
Well, Daisy did not make the machine gun. This machine gun was powered by a large CO2 tank, and it shot BBs, and it was used for aerial training. I mean, think about young men going into the war that needed to know how to lead a target with an artillery gun. And they would do this inside a warehouse. They would have a long arm suspended from the middle of the ceiling, which flew a flag around the perimeter of the room. And then they would have young men shooting this machine gun with BBs to try to hit the flag behind the target without hitting the target. And so Daisy did not make the gun, but they made 2,300,000,000 BBs that were used in this exercise.
Now, metal was in short supply during the war.
Yes.
And Daisy had to stay in business, so what did they do?
Well, they made a couple of little BB guns. They made a Chattermatic and a Commando gun, and these were military-looking style guns. But if you'll notice, they're all wood. And there's probably a brad or a tack somewhere, but one was a noisemaker and one of them shot a cork out the end of the barrel, but there was no real metal parts to it.
Couldn't get metal? You made toys?
That's how you survive.
Now, is there anything on the modern side that we can talk about? We got the World War II.
How modern do you want to get?
Well, let's put a man on the moon.
Let's put a man on the moon. Okay, how about a Daisy golf ball on the moon?
I would say, are you sure?
Well, I'll tell you the story and then we'll see how convinced you are. But we believe that there's 2 Daisy golf balls on the moon that have the Daisy logo on one side and Victor on the other side. Now, we came to know this late in the story. We came to know this when these photographs of Apollo mission astronauts were found in a home of a woman who'd passed away. Come to find out, she was the grandmother of the wife of a man who was Daisy's public relations director for years. And he was the old-fashioned public relations guy with the Rolodex, and he knew everyone and he had contacts. But when he was a young man right out of school, he worked for the American Sport Fishing Institute in Washington, D.C. Came home late one night, threw open the door of the townhome and said, "Honey, I'm home." And a gruff male voice says, "I'm not your honey, and you're in the wrong apartment." So thankfully no one was injured. They got their wives, they put the coffee pot on, and they became lifelong friends. Now this young man eventually becomes vice president of public relations for Daisy. The other gentleman was the head of Project Blue Book for the Air Force. He went out and investigated UFO sightings, alien sightings, and he would go on to become vice president of PR for NASA and the voice of mission control on all of the Apollo missions.
And up at the very top, we actually have a video of him with a golf club, an iron, hitting these golf balls.
Well, and that video is out there on the web if you want to look at it. It's Alan Shepard on the moon. And what happened was he ends up taking a golf ball with him, 2 golf balls with him, and he takes a golf club head and he duct tapes it onto an excavation tool, and he gets out there in his suit on the moon and he can barely move, and he hits the golf ball and said that one went miles and miles and miles. But how did it get there and how did we know about it is really the story that you asked me to convince you that's true. Well, so these 2 men who found each other in the wrong apartment and their wives become lifelong friends. And Al Chop comes up to Daisy and he brings teams of astronauts and they tour the Daisy BB gun plant because they all like BB guns. And they sign these photographs to Jack Powers with their sincere thanks, blah, blah, blah. And all of them sign it. In each case, each of the photos that we have, or a lot of the photos that we have, there's one over here, are signed by all the astronauts, meaning they were all here. And I've talked to some retired employees who did have lunch with them and who did know them. But the one that really stands out is the Apollo 14 photo because it says to Jack Powers, our most sincere thanks for the Daisy golf balls by Victor. They're out of this world. So when I see this, and I knew we needed it for our museum and for our company, we acquired it, and then I began finding Jack Powers' son and his wife. And they said, well, we're coming here, we've got to liquidate the home, we've got to put it up for sale. I'll come tell you the story. And I said, well, not to be rude, but I can't afford to miss the story. Would you email it to me now and then come see me and tell me in person? Because if you get sick and don't make the trip, I don't get the story, and I need this story. I need to know what this means. And he said, it means exactly what you think it means. There's 2 golf balls. They say Daisy on one side and Victor on the other, and they're on the moon. Victor owned Daisy. Victor also owned PGA Golf, the Worthington Golf Ball Company, Ertl Toys, Bear Archery, Head and Lures, Exercise Equipment Company. They owned a lot of companies. And so they had Worthington Ball Company make golf balls that said Victor on one side. And then they said, put Bear on some of them, put Daisy on some of them. Our presidents will go out and play golf. They'll give away golf balls. So they were never sold. But as soon as I began telling the story, some elderly retirees come forward and go, well, I've got one of those balls. I've got a ball that says Daisy and Victor on it, and you can have it. So we have a couple of them here in the museum's collection today.
And they are out of this world.
They're out of this world. At least 2 of them are.
Yes. Wow. Now, here's a Sears gun. Ted Williams. I got a quick story about Ted Williams, but
okay,
that looks like quite a... Oh, that's actually looks like the pistol here in that gun.
It does. They had a 100 and a 200 model pistol that you're looking at here, and then they made the 300 model was the rifle. And so there was a Daisy Powerline 300, and then I think they called it something different, like a LS 200, 300, when they made it for Sears, yes. What's fun about this is the receipt for this gun is inside, and it tells you, well, actually it's stamped on the box, what plant it was shipped to, what distribution center it went to, what store it went to, and the original receipt is inside the old credit card that you used to run the credit card machine on.
My quick Ted Williams story was that he was a baseball player,
right.
And he was a famous baseball player. And he was on some of the original fishing shows, but everybody wanted his name on their baseball bats or whatever. Mm-hmm. And Sears bought him and said, "We want your name on fishing rod and reels and everything." So one day he's out there fishing on the front of the boat, another guy's fishing on the back, and Ted Williams, of course, had the Sears brand lures. And he said, "Those Sears lures look like they work quite well. You're catching the most fish."
Okay.
He said, "Oh, it didn't have anything to do with the Sears." He says, "It has to do with the fact that I'm casting at twice the speed of you."
Is that what
It's really. And pulling it through the water twice as much as you, that's why I'm catching twice as many fish. Sears was very upset.
I bet they were. That's a great story. So Daisy made their first pistols in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. They did some beautiful leather work for the airgun pistols. They also did some leather work for a gentleman named Arvo Ajala, who was like a props director and behind-the-scenes shooter in some Western movies. And he would train a lot of these Western actors how to quick draw. Yeah. He actually had a steel shank in there, and you'll notice that the leather is turned with the slick side in.
Yeah. Wow. Power lines over here.
Powerline guns, the whole pneumatic phenomena came out in the 70s, and Daisy was quick to respond with the Powerline guns, much more powerful. There's some beautiful plastics in there too, if you look at that.
This evidently was a German gun marketed by Daisy.
Exactly, yes it was. Fortunate to have that. Daisy also had a program that they called Quick Skill, in which they developed it and took it to the U.S. Army back in the early 60s. And the idea was that you need to learn how to shoot instinctively. You didn't have time to mount the gun, line up your sights. You needed to know where that shot was going. Much like you do with shooting trap or skeet or sporting plays. You know where the shot's going, you're not necessarily aiming at it. And so they did it with a BB gun that they took all the sights off of it, and you would just cock, mount, and shoot the gun at a target. And they taught lots of people how to shoot instinctively. So much so with the concept for the Army that they came back and developed a consumer version called Quick Skill.
Quick Skill.
And Quick Kill and Quick Skill.
Interesting. Boy, lots of history.
There is a lot of history, and Daisy, being a major brand, was involved in everything and had lots of companies and people coming to them saying, "We want to be involved with you in some way." I mean, they even talked about Hollywood starlets that they had in some of their ads and commercial. They had Mickey Mouse toy guns. They had harmless Daisy toy guns. This is Annette Funicello and Bobby from the Mouseketeer shows. They were all dressed up in Daisy toy outfit. There was a Davy Crockett gun. There was a Zorro movie pistol, Roy Rogers. I mean, you name these people, they were involved in that. They were involved with Daisy in some way.
A great history. Well, as you can see, this Daisy Museum just continues, and each room is a new story. What about this room, Joe?
Well, we walk through history here. It's like a little maze, but as you walk through it, it's chronologically in order. And we like to talk about firearms in this corner because Daisy did dabble in making firearms. The first thing they did was they made a gun that shot caseless ammunition called VL gun. It was named for the inventor, Jules van Langenhoven, and he brought a concept to Daisy that said you can make a break barrel or an underlever gun that produces enough heat when it discharges to ignite a nitrated cotton fiber fused to a bullet, and when the bullet leaves the barrel, there is no brass casing to eject. So Daisy was intrigued by this and made a line of the VL guns. Then they made a little black 22 here, the Model 8. And then by 1989, they became convinced that if Daisy was your first BB gun, it could be your first air rifle. And so their task was to come out with a 22 firearm rifle that was priced at a price point that it could be so affordable that it was almost like a BB gun. You're upgrading, you're taking a step from your first BB gun to your first 22, which most people do. And yet the guns they made were beautiful, they were walnut, they had octagon barrels, and they were essentially priced out of that initial price point. And while they were a beautiful gun, they weren't as desirable as some of the major firearm brands. And this is another one of these cases where collectors love these because they were not commercially successful, and now people are out looking for them. And they're a nice gun, and they're easy to find one or pick up.
Joe, we think of Daisy, a 177, the smallest round you can possibly have, and many of us think of the 50 caliber as one of the biggest guns you have, and Daisy had their hand on that one too.
Both ends of the spectrum, right? Making BB guns, but during the point at which they became involved in making firearms and this VL gun and experimenting with firearms, and they had a license to produce firearms, obviously. A couple of the gentlemen who were working in a little bit off-site, it was on the same campus as the plant, it was a different building, the R&D department was, and they were making and selling 50 caliber rifles, firearms, to Naval SEALs and delivering them to Crane, Indiana, and they were all tested at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. And we have some retirees that actually took that gun, went to Aberdeen, and watched it being fired, and it's a tremendous rifle. Some of them were marked Daisy, and some of them did not have markings on the gun.
Any idea how many guns?
No, I don't. We don't know that. We really don't know that.
Well, they played a big role.
Isn't that something? You know, one time you asked me about 1 million guns, or how many are more than anybody in the world. I like this number because if you're not in federal government or an investment banker, you don't know what 50 million looks like. But that's the 50 millionth rifle, and that was in 1960. No telling how many rifles Daisy's made.
Gamo ultimately what?
Yes, they acquired Daisy.
I'm guessing, as an outsider, I'm guessing they really wanted your distribution. They wanted to put Gamo in all the stores you have your Daisy goods. But who's the biggest out there today?
It depends on what you can get into different categories and find people that have a niche. But I think Gamo Daisy is dominant because it was a good marriage. It took place in 2016. Again, you and I have talked about how Daisy was a brand that is everybody's first gun, but people think of it as a BB gun, a youth gun, a plinking gun, a target shooting gun. And then there's a category of adults who want to hunt, and they want to shoot a larger caliber and a more powerful gun. And like I say, Daisy had experimented and does today have the Winchester line and the Powerline line. Gamo was in that category. What Gamo didn't have was the youth. So now if you look at it like one continuum, you start with a Daisy, you move into a Powerline or Winchester or a Gamo, and as an adult shooter you're still doing business with this one company. So you're right, Daisy was calling on the right buyers, had excellent penetration on the displays in most major retail stores, and so did Gamo as an adult brand.
I'm sure both companies sold guns, air guns, globally, but at the same time, I think of Daisy as a U.S. gun, and I think of Gamo as a European gun.
It's a good analogy, except for the fact that, like, when I first joined the company, I joined in '99, and for years and up to that point, we had 2 models in our line that were marked Daisy, but they were made by Gamo. And so Daisy was buying Gamo pellets in that time period, and they also recognized that Gamo made a quality break barrel gun, and that they would be better off marketing that than trying to design one on their own. So it's 2 companies that have a long history together, and now they're side by side, or they're together on the shelf, and they solve this solution for maybe a smaller store buyer who doesn't want to have 6 brands and he only wants a couple. He can have Gamo and Daisy side by side, and he's taking care of his customers, which is his goal.
Now, Lawrence Taylor could not be with us today, but he's in charge of Daisy. Does he get much visitors from Europe and Gamo and telling him what to do?
Yeah, Daisy. Lawrence Taylor, you mentioned, couldn't make it today because of a family matter, but Lawrence handles public relations for that group, and it's Daisy and Gamo together. So he's really good at social media. He's good at working with writers. He's good at creating events and having hunts and things like that get the product out there and get it used. And a lot of people were responding to that type of advertising. I mean, in my day, we ran ads in major magazines and we sponsored TV shows. And today, it's really a lot of it's about social media and making those impressions. And he does a good job with that for the company. He's very busy at it too.
Joe, Daisy has a history of making limited edition guns.
They do. The collector's market is big with Daisy. You told me you had a few guns, but over the years they made a few. They made a lot of limited edition guns that were very special and commemorated different events, like the Pony Express, the Gold Rush. There's been Buffalo Bill Cody guns. And when this museum got established, we recognized that that's what we can do for a living. I mean, we can promote and take care of the consumer who wants gun number 357 out of 1,000, and Daisy really wasn't set up to do that anymore. They're set up to take care of the retailer, the individual on customer service, sure, but not be recording numbers of special guns. So this museum took over that role for Daisy, and I think has done a wonderful job. And today, in our limited edition collectible area, we have all the current commemorative guns. We have the downtown gun, the world's largest BB gun. We have police and fire guns, Second Amendment, Pledge of Allegiance guns. We have state guns. If you've got a grandfather in Texas, we'll put the state of Texas on there, and the motto of Texas and when it was brought into the Union.
You know, Joe, all the other brands of air guns today, A, they don't have that heritage, and B, they don't have these special guns that they've brought out. But you do.
And a lot of them don't have a museum either.
And they don't have a museum.
It's a wonderful thing that we have here, and over the years we're so thankful for this collection that's been put together, and we're just the stewards of it today. And we want to support people's memories. When they come in like you do and they tell us their story, that becomes part of our story too.
Does anybody else have a museum?
I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I'm sure they have some sort of collection on display. But years ago, Daisy decided that was important, and they put a rail down the side of the lobby and stand guns up like soldiers, put tags on them, tell you when the gun was made, and that's become this wonderful collection we're stewards of today.
There's the Duke, John Wayne's gun.
You know, that's probably one of the more popular commemorative guns in here, and technically Daisy made the gun, but another company, not this museum, owned the rights to the John Wayne name and image, and so they laser engraved the guns. They bought the guns from Daisy. So today, you know, like any other museum, you exit through our gift shop, and we hope you buy something because, not you, but we hope people buy something because that supports our museum. So we have signs and books, and we have a little collector's guidebook there that'll tell you every model and when it was made and for how many years and what the features were.
Daisy also makes a lot of pistols, and they make a lot of slingshots.
They do have a good line of slingshots, and man, you know, I could never shoot a slingshot. And we used to make them out of a fork in a tree and cut the inner tube rubber to make the...
Yep.
But today, Daisy has a full line of slingshots, and here's two of the more popular models right here.
Now those numbers, the model numbers, are famous also.
Well, those model numbers are fast. Yeah, you have an F-16 or a B-52. You've got a fast slingshot, don't you? So, yeah, they named their guns after plane models just to have a number on them.
Air guns, keychains,
Christmas ornaments, hiking badges, magnets, wooden stickers, pins, gun racks, gun displays.
What's in that barrel over there?
That is, I'd say it's a barrel full of BBs, but it can't be, or it'd be sitting in the old basement here. So it's a barrel with a lot of BBs in it. And it's the most interactive thing we have in the museum, because what you do is you get you a BB tin and you fill it full of BBs, and now you can take home a souvenir that you have filled at the Daisy Museum.
What is the difference between the copper BBs and zinc or steel BBs?
Over the years, most BB companies have had a variety of colors of BBs. Daisy actually started with something called a Copprotect, which was flashed with a copper coating, and then they went to the golden bullseye BBs, and then eventually Daisy migrated to just the zinc-plated BB. And it's just to prevent them from rusting and keep oxidation down. That's the only purpose in giving them a color or giving them a flashing. Other than that, it's just about 100% sphere of steel. So all of the companies have now kind of settled on their color of BB, and I guess Daisy's color is now zinc color.
Oh, and here's some of the pistols too.
Well, we stocked a full line of Daisy guns. There's not everything on display at any given time, but we have Daisy catalogs here and Winchester catalogs here. If anybody's looking for a particular gun and they contact the Daisy Museum here in Rogers, Arkansas, we can get it for them, and we can have it from the factory in a matter of a day or two, and then we can ship it out to them UPS. So we take care of the collector's market, but we also help to take care of the airgun shooter and those who are just interested in acquiring a new Daisy pistol or rifle.
Of course, the Model 11 is a great pistol, but today one of the best air guns are these blowback versions.
Yeah, and that Model 11 is blowback also. And
That's right.
When you talk about blowback pistols, you're really talking about a gun that you could use for training, learning how to correctly hold a pistol, aim a pistol, and you want that blowback action to be rather realistic as you maybe consider getting a concealed carry license or learning how to shoot a firearm pistol.
Yes. Well, this is a great tour that you've given us here. We were here. We stopped by Saturday just to kind of see the place, and this gentleman helped us out as well. He seemed to at least know about the store.
We have a great staff. We have a few retirees, and we have a few people who aren't, and they all have one thing in common, and that is they love this brand and they love this place, and they want to see it succeed.
Well, perhaps one of the reasons that I've enjoyed this video so much is that my own home looks a lot like a museum. But I'll tell you something my home does not have. My home does not have a restroom in it with a Daisy pistol as a toilet roller and a Daisy rifle as a paper towel holder. But Daisy Museum does. Well, as you can see, this is part of the Dr. Russ Museum. I was a knife distributor for a while. I'm retired from that. But I did keep some of the best. some of the most unusual knives. If you enjoyed today's video of the Daisy Museum, give us a thumbs up. If not, just give us a thumbs down. If you enjoyed having a former vice president of Daisy give us the tour, as I did, give us the thumbs up. We hope that you'll subscribe. We've got a lot of great videos coming. And we hope that you leave comments. If I don't have the answers, I'll go get the answers. And thanks for sharing with us today. Dr. Paula and I are very, very happy that, amazed really, that you rely on us as one of your resources for springers and break barrels and piston guns and PCP guns and large bore. We've got a passion for those, and we're glad to share it with you.